This episode is sponsored by independent Swiss luxury watchmaker Ulysse Nardin. Ulysse Nardin has continuously reset the boundaries of watch engineering and design thanks to its long-established technical excellence and its unconventional approach to watchmaking. To find out more, visit ulysse-nardin.com. That's ULYSSE-NARDIN.com. Ulysse Nardin.
You're listening to The Luxury Item, the podcast on the business of luxury and the people and companies that are shaping the future of the luxury industry. Here's your host, Scott Kerr.
Watch resale has continued to grow as a formidable chunk of the entire watch market, which is also booming. New Swiss watches are a $53 billion market, while the pre-owned watch market is worth nearly half that, at about $24 billion. However, the plunging price tags in second-hand luxury watches marks a sharp reversal of the pandemic heyday, when the likes of Rolex and Audemars Piguet saw demand outstripping supply. Appetite for the pre-owned versions of the watches sent their prices soaring in early 2022, led by sales to millennials and Gen Z customers who were comfortable buying pre-owned items online. At the time, people confined to their homes and flush with savings turned to luxury spending, helping high-end watch, bag, and apparel makers in the process. Online marketplaces for luxury watches made access to the watch market easier, while the hype around pre-owned watches helped prop up demand, sometimes even more than their first-hand counterparts. My guest on The Luxury Item is Eugene Tutunikov, founder and CEO of SwissWatchExpo, one of the leading retailers of pre-owned luxury watches in the U.S. and worldwide. Eugene joined the Atlanta-based family-owned business in 2016 after spending 10 years as a trader on Wall Street. Eugene has since transformed the mom-and-pop operation into a top player in the pre-owned luxury watch market today. Welcome to The Luxury Item, Eugene.
Hey, Scott. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me. I'm so excited to have you on. So I want to kick things off by going back a little bit before you join your family business. You know, it's a great story. You're part of a family of refugees from Ukraine that left for the United States in the late 1980s to pursue the American dream. Can you talk about your family's journey here to the United States and how they got into the watch business and when they realized that the pre-owned luxury watches were going to be a big business?
Sure. So the story goes back to '89. As you mentioned, we were born in Ukraine. It was Soviet era Ukraine. And in the fall of '89, we left as refugees. And what's very interesting about the story is basically the Soviet Union were not letting Jewish refugees out for many years. They finally opened the doors. They said you could leave, but you can't take anything with you. So we left with a few $100s in our name. I was 6 years old. My parents were 26 when we arrived, and we settled in the Philadelphia area. And it was a very powerful experience for me as a child. We grew up around the community of all Eastern European refugee immigrants to the States. Everybody was on welfare the first few years. I remember going to the supermarket with my grandma when I was 6 years old or 7 years old and asking her, why does our money look different than other people's money? Because we were on welfare and we were doing grocery shopping using food stamps, which were these like gigantic, colorful looking coupons, which was, I don't know why they made them stand out so much, but they made them stand out a lot. And what was inspirational about that experience for me is within 5 to 7 years, my parents and all their friends were in the suburbs with a house, with a Lexus or Mercedes. These are all people that came to America without knowing English, restarting their lives. So to me, it really cemented the fact that the American dream really is alive and well, and it was the right decision for me and my family to move to the States. We grew up very proud to be Americans. We would always toast to America on our anniversary of coming to America. We still do that. So it was very, very much the American dream was alive with us and our whole community growing up. And, ever since I was a little kid, especially my grandparents who came over with us, they would always say, like, we all left our lives. I'm an only child. We all left our lives so you could have a better future. So it's like hearing that since you were 6 or 7 years old kind of puts a little pressure on you. So I ended up Yeah, studying really, really well in school. I graduated number two out of 1,000 kids. I got some scholarships and ended up going to NYU to study finance, economics, and math. And from there, I graduated in 3.5 years, and I went to work on Wall Street and some of the big investment banks as a derivatives trader. My mother at the time was working as a computer programmer, and she got together with my stepfather, who was already living in Atlanta. We grew up in Philadelphia, and I was living in New York. And he was a Rolex trained master watchmaker, and
Hmm.
he was running a service center in Atlanta, servicing Rolex watches. When she moved to Atlanta in 2008, she stopped being a programmer, and they started this business where um, aside from his full-time job, they would buy watches, he'd fix them up, and she would sell them on eBay. So that is how the initial versions of Swiss Watch Expo came to be. Um, in 2009, they launched a rudimentary website. In 2000, they also opened up a local shop doing both jewelry and watches in Atlanta at the time. I invested in the business to help them purchase some inventory. At, as I was working, I was in my mid 20s working in New York as a trader still. At the time, I really never thought I would be involved. And they would tell me stories, and I was with them for all the successes and challenges in the early years because we were talking all the time. And they would tell me stories of how, somebody from Florida would fly in to buy a watch, or they shipped the watch to Texas. And, as the years went on, I was like, well, if they could sell one or two watches a day, what would it take to be a much larger business? Um, I felt that the consumer behavior was really shifting online for luxury goods, for pre-owned luxury goods. My parents asked me to join for a few years, and finally, in the summer of 2016, I made the move to Atlanta. At the time, they had a very successful local mom and pop shop, and my goal was to really cement our online reputation nationally and figure out how to build a real e-commerce powerhouse for the business, how to scale the operations, how to put more data around what we're doing. And it was kind of off to the races. We almost doubled that first year that I came on board, and it was rapid growth afterwards. And it's been an extremely fun ride.
What was the pre-owned luxury watch market like at that time?
When I moved in 2016, it was still very much a pure collector's market, and it was consumers that were not super knowledgeable or super already have a number of pieces at home. They would never even consider buying pre-owned, and even those that did, most of them would not consider buying pre-owned.
Right.
It was considered. There was a lot, very little transparency still in the market. There was very little trust from consumers in purchasing in the market. So you really had to know what you're doing, and most of the shopping was being done on marketplaces such as eBay, and this was around the time that Chrono 24 was starting to take off as well.
Did you see an opportunity then too, as far as transparency?
Yes, so we kind of made our business model all about being very transparent. So we own all of our inventory. We photograph it in-house. We're very transparent in communication. There's no negotiation on when we're selling the watch or buying the watch. The price is the price. We know it's going to be fair. We always want to provide a lot of value, but we don't want consumers thinking that, hey, if they negotiate a little harder, maybe they would have saved an extra few $100s. So we want to be always very upfront, transparent, and create a lot of trust with the consumer. Um, that's part of the value equation that we're providing the customers.
Obviously, a lot of other companies grew and jumped on board the bandwagon here. A number of large competitors are now playing in the online pre-owned luxury watch marketplace scene since you launched. Bob's Watches, Chrono 24, Watchbox, etc. How does Swiss Watch Expo uniquely position itself among these platforms?
We're not a marketplace. We have one of the biggest collections of inventory in the country, all under one roof. We have about 3,000 watches. We do all the authentication, refurbishment, in-house. When you talk to our salespeople, you're most likely going to be on a video call, whether you're in California, Canada, or London with our sales team. As you're discussing the watches, they're going to be holding the watches in their hand. So we have all the inventory. We're fully integrated. And so when you say marketplaces, so we don't consider ourselves a marketplace because everything we sell, we own. Marketplaces are usually there's sellers on there, and the marketplace does the marketing and the collection of payments and so forth,
Right.
like a Chrono 24, which I think that experience, in my view, our experience is a stronger one for the consumer. When a consumer goes in a marketplace, it creates there's a lot of work for them. They don't know what's a good value. They're dealing with multiple sellers on the marketplace. Some sellers might have really good knowledge and good service. Some sellers might not. They don't know if the watch has been authenticated yet, hasn't been serviced. There are many sellers on the marketplaces that will list watches they don't even have in the hopes they get an order, and then they try to fulfill it. And a lot of times those orders get canceled. The pricing tends to be all over the place. The quality, especially if you're buying pre-owned, is not consistent in the marketplace. So our goal is to eliminate the most of that for a consumer. So since we do all the service and refurbishment in-house, and we really pride ourselves in getting all of our watches as close to new condition as possible before we sell it. And if you read our reviews online, which we've got thousands everywhere, you'll see a lot of reviews saying like, hey, they shipped me a used watch. They said it was 10 years old, but I think they gave me a new one by accident, because the customer gets it and they can't even tell it's a pre-owned watch. They think it's a new watch, even though it's a 10 or 15-year-old watch. And in a marketplace, you can't really get that consistent product quality. The pricing is not always fair because it's all over the place depending on the seller. You don't get the same customer service experience that you would with us, because our sales team is expertly trained and they're much more equipped to talk about the watch when they're holding it in their hands and they're discussing it with you, versus somebody that's in a cubicle that never actually held the watch in their hands, period, that they're trying to talk to you about it. So we have a very consistent experience that a marketplace, that we believe a pure marketplace cannot provide. As far as Watchbox and Bob's Watches, they're certainly competitors of ours. I think they have great businesses. I consider those two names and us as the top three in the country right now for online pre-owned watch sales, and we're all kind of growing as the market keeps growing and taking market share, I think, from the smaller players. Bob's Watches is typically mostly Rolex, from what I understand. When I look in their website, they typically carry 700 to 1,000 watches. We typically have 3,000 in inventory, so we have a very wide selection. And Watchbox is a phenomenal platform. I know they've grown a good team and raised a lot of money to build that business. Their main strength is they're really, really strong in that ultra premium market, 100,000 and up, which is not really a space that we play in much. That's not really something that we're tackling.
So can I assume that the biggest share of watches you have are from the holy trinity of Swiss watches, Audemars Piguet, Rolex, and Patek Philippe?
That's correct. About 55% of our sales are coming from those brands.
And where are the rest from?
Cartier, Omega, Breitling, and a number of smaller brands as well.
You said in an interview back in May 2023 that 2022 SwissWatchExpo sales reached $80 million, up 30% over the previous year. And you're expecting sales of 100 million within 2 years. So with the slowdown that has hit the high-end goods market and spread into the world of luxury timepieces, do you think you'll still be able to hit that number?
I think we'll certainly hit that number. I think it's still possible next year. This year has definitely been a much more challenging year for the market. We're about flat to last year, and we're up on unit volume, slightly down on dollar volume. It's interesting that everybody kind of said if there's a slowdown, the ultra wealthy will never stop spending because they're still wealthy. in our case, we've actually seen a bigger slowdown in watches over 40,000 than we have seen in watches, say, under 15,000. Because a lot of the consumers that were buying watches over 40 or 50,000 from us, they have a very big collection of watches at home, 10, 15, sometimes 30 pieces. And they were not necessarily looking to add another piece to their collection. A lot of them actually became net sellers in the last year to us. Whereas somebody buying $5,000 or $10,000 watch, it's very often an aspirational purchase they've been thinking about for years. It might be their first or second luxury watch purchase, and as long as they're still employed and they're probably celebrating some occasion, they're going to go ahead with that purchase. So that's kind of driven the fact that we're seeing our unit volume up this year from last year, but our dollar volume is actually slightly down.
And you know more than anybody that the pandemic really gave the luxury watch market its moment. Growth for luxury watch resale platforms accelerated after the pandemic as a surge of interest in tangible assets like timepieces, pent-up demand and savings, particularly among the wealthy, and a new breed of investors and flippers drove demand and secondary market prices for new and used unicorn watches to record highs. What did you learn from a business perspective about traveling at a Mach 2 speed in the stratosphere, all of a sudden hitting the brakes?
It was interesting to see. It was a combination, I think, of people sitting at home. They're not able to travel and eat out and spend money on the luxuries that they're used to spending money. A lot of their savings were growing at the same time. Interest rates were zero, so they weren't really earning anything on their savings. So a lot of consumers went and started shopping online for luxury goods, not just watches, but watches definitely. The demand skyrocketed. At the same time, there was some slowdown in production from the manufacturers. So as demand picked up, supply went down, and there was this perfect storm where it seemed like a scramble from consumers to get their hands on any luxury watch, which was, of course, fantastic for business.
Right.
We're very because we started this business and it's a bootstrap company, and we started with very little and we've grown it to a very sizable business. We're very good at operators and very, very good at, how we purchase inventory, how we manage our expenses. And, I saw a lot of competitors either start hiring people in a mania as prices went up, and they went from 20, 30 employees to 70, 80 employees within a span of 2 years, or start really stocking only the hot watches, where we kind of we took that opportunity to concentrate on a lot of watches that they're not as volatile in price as a Royal Oak or a new Daytona might be. So we were really focusing a lot on watches in the from 1995 to 2015 era. That became the bulk of our inventory at the time, and really inventory that we felt much more comfortable carrying, that would not have these wild price swings as a business. And I think that's really helped us out because we didn't have to take the hits that I think a lot of our competitors had to take over the last 12 months, as some of the hottest watches came down in price, but a lot of what we carried did not.
And the strong pandemic era surge in pricing for the most hyped pre-owned Rolex and Patek Philippe models have also started to wane. The Bloomberg Subdial Watch Index fell again for the month of November, down like 3% from the prior month and 10% from a year ago, a new 2-year low. So what's driving this growing downward pressure in the market?
I think with interest rates going up this year, I think there's now, like I mentioned, a lot of the money that went into watches was a function of people were looking at their bank accounts, they had cash sitting there, earning zero, and they didn't know where else to spend it. And there wasn't a better place than investing it in something nice on their wrist that they're going to enjoy. Now, with interest rates up a lot this year, it created a lot of optionality for people with that kind of savings or where they want to spend it. So it shifted some demand away from the pre-owned luxury watch market. Now, with the stock market back up and interest rates no longer heading higher, it seems like they're down the last month or so. good amount, and there's expectations of cuts in interest rates next year. I think the last report is expecting 5 or 6 interest rate cuts next year. We're actually seeing a really nice pickup of demand this holiday season. So we're trending at about 15% growth for November and December, which I'm really happy about. This is
Great.
compared to last year. So the way I see it, it's a very, very large market, and we can continue growing no matter what happens. McKinsey, I think, estimates the pre-owned market to be 26 billion
Yeah,
globally.
right.
Um, Most of our business is in the U.S. Even within the U.S., if it's a third of that, that leaves us plenty of room to grow as well as our top competitors. I think you'll see a lot of the smaller players that got into the business in the mania thinking they could make a quick buck, soon exiting the space. And also, consumers are getting smarter. They're estimating about 40 million fake watches being produced a year
Hmm.
and being sold. And we have this unique capability to authenticate service and open up every watch. We have an 11-person watchmaking department right now that does that work. Our top competitors are able to do similar work. The smaller guys cannot. And consumers are getting smarter. They're only going to go to the top players and not really go to the local jeweler that might have 1 or 2 watches and has no idea, if what's inside them.
We'll be right back after a quick break with more of my conversation with Eugene Tutunikov.
A pioneer in innovative technologies and the use of high-tech materials such as silicium, Ulysse Nardin is one of the few integrated watch manufacturers with the expertise to produce its own high-precision components and movements. In 2001, the brand changed the face of watchmaking by launching the Freak. Freak led a counter-revolution to traditional watchmaking and reshaped the art of horology. Today, Ulysse Nardin remains devoted to its quest for watchmaking perfection through 4 collections: Freak, Blast, Diver, and Marine.
We're back with more from Eugene Tutunikov. Last year, Rolex decided to certify its pre-owned timepieces for resale through its authorized dealer network. It's believed that watches that have the official stamp from Rolex currently command a 25% higher price on average across the portfolio. Online resellers like SwissWatchExpo and others are ineligible for the program. Has the Rolex certified pre-owned program negatively impacted the demand for Rolexes on your platform?
It has not impacted us negatively. Like you mentioned, I look at the prices, and we're typically seeing prices between 15 and 20%, sometimes as high as 25%, as you mentioned, compared to where we're selling for the certified pre-owned from Rolex. Um, our customers, and we get a lot of referral business and repeat business, is a big part of it. They already trust us, but again, I think that is actually really, really good for the pre-owned business. You'd be surprised how many people are still hesitant to buy a pre-owned watch. Or so, I had a friend recently. They were shopping for his wife, and his wife was just, I don't want to wear a pre-owned watch. I'm uncomfortable buying something pre-owned. I only want something new.
Yeah, the stigma.
And I think the stigma around it, exactly. And I think with Rolex putting their marketing and their stamp of approval on the pre-owned market as a whole is going to be lifting all boats.
Mhm.
We've, like I mentioned, we have a stellar reputation. Every day we get new reviews, we get referral business. So people know that our watchmaking department is absolutely obsessive about the quality that comes out from them. So nobody questions our ability to authenticate, service, or refurbish these watches. So we have not seen a hit from the business. If anything, I think it's helped our Rolex business this year. But it's just, I think you'll see a consolidation in the space in the coming years, where the top 5, 6 players really become bigger and bigger, and anybody that was 10 to 20 is going to become smaller and smaller.
We know an investment in a luxury watch is much less risky than the stock market. It's really closer to an investment in raw materials like gold or other precious metals. In fact, luxury watches are typically made from those precious metals. Do you think most of your customers think about their luxury watch purchases as sound investment pieces, or do they just want to have a status symbol on their arms or a high-end fashion accessories at a good value?
I don't think our customers are mostly considering it an investment piece. They do appreciate the fact that they hold their value, and they might appreciate it. it the customers in the past, go back 15 plus years, you were really buying a luxury watch with the intent to keep it for life. Um, Lately, the most recent statistics, 60% of pre-owned luxury watches are being purchased by consumers under 40 years old, and their mentality is very different. They're not buying it for life. They're really buying it to enjoy it, and when they're ready to sell it or trade it in for something else that they want to wear instead, they're quickly moving to do that. So the mentality around it changed, and the fact that there's a lot more transparency and liquidity in the market has made it easier for them to do that. So they appreciate that the watches hold their value, but they're not buying it purely for investment purposes. And I personally have a little bit of a problem with the media when they constantly talk about how great an investment luxury watches are. And some of them are great investments, but by and large, I still feel consumers and our clients should be buying a watch that they're going to enjoy wearing. They're going to appreciate the craftsmanship and have some kind of special connection with the timepiece. One thing that from an investment perspective that all these articles fail to mention, and I almost find it misleading, is there's a lot of there's still some transaction costs. So if you're buying a watch, you're paying sales tax. So you're paying between 5 and 9% sales tax, depending on the state that you live in. If you then go back to sell a watch to somebody like us, then there's some, we need to buy that watch, we need to service it, refurbish it, authenticate it. So that could cost you between 10 and 15%, depending on the model as well. So the watch has to appreciate a good amount just for you to get the money back, which most of them do, and they usually keep up or outpace inflation. But I wouldn't recommend to most of our clients to buy watches purely from an investment purpose. I want them to buy it, enjoy it, and if they want to ever sell it, be able to trade it in for something else and get a very good price for it. And in many cases, they might get more, but some cases they might get less.
And now we're seeing these new consumer segments, including young people, women, and consumers outside of the US and Europe. Two largest watch markets for most of the 20th century are leading the massive upswing in luxury watch sales. Are a lot of your customers first-time luxury watch buyers?
A lot of our customers are first-time luxury watch buyers. Even more of our customers are first-time pre-owned luxury watch buyers. Um, what's happened the last few years, and this is kind of what the problem that we're solving is, a lot of your customers are going to the authorized dealer. They have very, very little inventory in stock. They're getting some kind of nod and wink to maybe buy some jewelry or a watch they're not interested in buying before they could get the watch that they're actually interested in buying. Usually they're going there, they're not even able to buy something when they go there. So then they go online, they don't know who to trust, and then they find us and they read the reviews and maybe ask around about us and realize we have a stellar reputation. So there's a lot of customers that are initially looking to potentially buy a new watch and then ending up in the pre-owned watch market. So a lot of our customers, it is their first time buying pre-owned, and we get these emails saying, I'm never going back to the AD again. It's been a great experience. I saved money. In many cases, consumers can still save money from retail when they're buying from us. You guys have a amazing selection of thousands of watches, and I bought the watch and I was wearing it for dinner the next day, and I'm in California and you're in Atlanta. So why would I schlep to the local mall to see 4 watches out of, in the showcase and maybe not the ones I want to buy. So we're really converting people to the pre-owned watch market. And I think once they enter it, they typically stay within the pre-owned watch market.
An interest in Swiss luxury watches has been driven by an increasingly close relationship with the culture at large, with associations with musicians, football stars, comic book franchises, and video games, all driving visibility among younger, more diverse clients. And as younger, more global, and more opinionated audiences build watch communities of their own, how is SwissWatchExpo keeping these audiences engaged?
We've seen a lot of local groups, local collectors pop up, and they have their own online channels, either through Facebook or Instagram, and a lot of meetups. Um, we support them. We welcome them in. We're not actively participating, partly because we're having trouble still finding the staff that we need. We're about 33 people full time right now. We're trying to hire another 5 to 10 people within the next 9 months because we're so busy. So while we're not building that community, where they're sharing information within that community, and then when they're ready to buy or sell our watch or come in and try a watch, they usually come and engage with us. So it's not what I would love the scenario to be. I'd love for us to be more engaged in that. We just currently don't have the staff and the time to be able to do that, unfortunately. But that's something in the future I think we should do more of.
And the rise in popularity of luxury watches and the industry's limited production capacity has also brought more attention to smaller independent brands and models, especially those seen as high value, unique, or even hard to find. Have you been finding more interest on your platform for these smaller artisanal brands?
I am glad, and I love to see the smaller independent watchmakers do well, and the creativity and innovation coming out of the independents. Uh, we as a business have really focused on the major brands. Part of it is it's really hard to tell which independents are gonna survive for the long haul and succeed. And one of the things we want to be able to offer our customers, if you buy a watch today and you come back in 5 years to sell it, you're going to get a really good and fair price when you sell it. And unfortunately, with independents, ones that are hot right now and really popular would be not popular in 5 or 8 years, and we would have a tough time being able to take that watch back on trade or buy it back at a fair price compared to where the consumer bought it. So we're really trying to stick with the brands with the longest history, the tried and true brands, the ones that we know are going to be around for many, many years, just because it'll make that circular transaction for our customers much easier.
And one of the offshoots, if you will, that have been stemming from this luxury watch craze, I could say 2023 can certainly be labeled the year of the blockbuster watch collaboration. John Mayer's G-Shock curation or Audemars Piguet's recent partnership with Travis Scott. The watch world has embraced linking and building in 2023 like never before. Bringing together two unique partners benefits both parties, as they both have an opportunity to reach each other's audiences. And of course, every collaboration product aspires to be a cultural movement that is unforgettable. Why have we been seeing more watch collaborations than ever before, even in the last few years?
I think it's great marketing by the watch brands, and I think each collaboration kind of has its own context to it, so it's not the same rule for all of them. The AP Travis Scott collaboration you just mentioned, I think that was announced just 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I think it's really neat. It's a royal oak on a strap. It's got some really unique design elements to it, but I think it's a way for the brands to make their way into mainstream media and to reach a consumer that they're not reaching otherwise and appeal to a new audience. So to me, it's just brilliant marketing. And, it's bringing in new values to the product that come from the collaboration that might not be a part of the brand's history. And I think it's going to continue. I think the brands just need to be careful not to overdo it, because you don't want the brand to just be associated with collaborations and not from the long history and reputation that they have built. I don't feel they are overdoing it, so I welcome to see more of it going forward. But I think it's brilliant marketing on their part.
One of the biggest concerns in the secondhand luxury watch space has always been the menace of counterfeits, which represents a $5 billion problem. What kind of measures does SwissWatchExpo implement to ascertain with certainty that a watch is authentic?
So, like I mentioned, we are fundamentally my stepfather is a master watchmaker, and him and my mother started the business. So we were always a watchmaking driven organization. We now have an 11-person department. Every watch that we buy is opened up. Every part is authenticated. We do all the service and repairs in-house. We have a separate team that it goes through for polishing and refinishing, and we photograph all the inventory in-house. So when you buy a watch online, you need to ensure who you're buying it from. A, they're holding the watch and they have the watch, and B, it has went through such a meticulous authentication process. There are very few companies in the country that can do it at our scale, and we're doing it on hundreds of watches a week. We've bought and sold over 50,000 watches over the years to retail customers, and we've never had an issue with authenticity. So we're very, very, very careful. I think it's part of what's led to our success as a business. Consumers realize there's a lot of fakes floating around, so they're only going to the trusted places. So that's us, our top competitors, and obviously the brands themselves if they have a pre-owned program. So that's where I think all the buying and selling is going to be in the next 5-10 years.
So we touched upon this earlier. Morgan Stanley estimates that the pre-owned luxury watch market will grow $35 billion by 2026 from $24 billion today. What will be the key drivers to get to that number?
The key drivers, I think a lot of that growth is there's I believe over 100 billion or hundreds of billions of watches in people's coffers right now at home, pre-owned watches. And like I mentioned, there's a big change in consumer behavior where people are much more likely to buy a watch and then sell it or trade it in for another watch within a 2-year period than they were in the past where they were buying it for life. So you're just seeing the current pool of watches is not really necessarily growing as quickly, but how quickly it changes hands has been going up significantly over the past few years. Consumers are just becoming more and more comfortable buying pre-owned luxury goods, whether it's watches or handbags or jewelry. They're much more comfortable shopping online, which has been the growth driver of the pre-owned watch space. There's just been a lot more transparency and trusted players like us in the market. So consumers are much more comfortable entering the pre-owned market that have never shopped pre-owned before.
So what does the next 10-year roadmap look like for SwissWatchExpo?
In the near term, we are, we've grown so quickly the last 5-6 years, and this year was a lot about building and investing in infrastructure and team, and we're really building an operation that's going to be able to scale and handle volumes that are 2-3 times larger than what we're doing right now. Our demand for our product really feels insatiable. If we were able to process, authenticate, and get 25% more watches on our site next year, I'm confident our growth and sales will be a minimum of 25%, but we need to scale our whole process and team to be able to handle that. So a lot of that is just investing in technology, team, giving our team the right tools that they need to be more efficient. That's in the near term. And then there's a lot of exciting things that I'm thinking about. Long term, I know Apple just announced a high-end UVR headset that's going to hit the shelves in January. Well, our sales team currently does a lot of selling on FaceTime. In 2-3 years, I'd love to see them selling over a VR headset where the consumer can have a very immersive experience as if they're walking through our showroom and talking to our salesperson live. I don't think that technology is there yet, but will it be there in 5 years? I think so, and I'd like to be, an early adopter of it. There's a lot of other things that we're doing, including how we're using big data, how we're going to be using AI tools in the future to spot for fakes even before they hit. Even before the watch comes in, we'll be able to scan images, and AI tools will tell us which ones are likely to be fake or not. There's a lot of innovative technology that we're going to be utilizing in the future that will make the business more efficient, which only leads to better prices to consumers. The more efficient we can make the business, the better the consumer experience will be.
So what do you think your biggest challenge is going to be in getting to that goal that you want?
The biggest challenge, I think, is building out the systems that we need. Right now, it's still very, I would say, micromanaged and high touched business throughout the organization, which, micromanaging kind of sounds like a dirty word, but it's actually has been really good for us because it's enabled us to have a very good consumer experience, a very controlled quality of the product. So the trick is, how do we go from that process, which is very controlled, and me and my family and the other leadership in the company, we're very much hands-on in every part of the business, versus when we go 3-4x, we need more systems and technology to kind of take over from manual aspects of that process. But how do we do that without losing any quality along the way of everything that we're doing? So I think that is the biggest challenging, and it's kind of a tightrope balancing act. So that's the part that kind of keeps me up at night. How do we go through that transformation effectively?
So Eugene, my final question is the luxury item question, which I ask all my guests. So if you were stranded on a deserted island and you could only have one single luxury item with you, what would that luxury item be? It can't be any form of air or water transportation to get you off that island or anything that requires mobile service so you can call somebody to get you off that island. It's just you on this massive deserted island with nobody around. What would that one single luxury item you would like to have with you?
I'd say it would be the latest Kindle, preloaded with 1,000 bestsellers from all different categories, and I guess a solar charger. But big believer that continuous learning is what creates a happy life. I'm always trying to learn new things. And if you're in a deserted island without any human interaction, I think that would be that much more important to mental happiness. So I think that would be my one item.
Eugene Tutunikov, CEO and founder of SwissWatchExpo, thank you so much for joining me on the luxury item.
Thank you, Scott. Really appreciate you having me, and happy to chat anytime.
That's it for this episode of the Luxury Item Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this useful and entertaining, I would be really grateful if you can share it with a friend or colleague. I would love it if you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It really helps other listeners find us. The Luxury Item Podcast is a production of Silvertone Consulting. I'm your host, Scott Kerr. Until next time.